Running a sales training company myself, I've sent thousands of emails as a salesperson, helped my clients write hundreds of thousands of emails, and also received hundreds of cold emails every week from sellers, most of which are terrible. Over the years, I've seen the same handful of mistakes. One, salespeople just talk about themselves, their company, don't talk about their customers. Two, they write long-winded emails that are way over 100 words, and when your buyer sees that big block of text, they're just going to delete the email. Three, writing, "I hope you're well" in the first line of the email. They're a stranger to you and it seems false, and also it makes your email much longer. And four, using weird words that are corporate jargon like streamline, efficiencies, and circling back. So in this video, I'll be breaking down step-by-step structures for 5 types of emails that will help you avoid these mistakes, get more replies, and build more pipeline. Do you know what directors, VPs, managers, and CEOs all have in common? They all receive hundreds and hundreds of rubbish emails every week that have no relevance to them. The good news is that means the bar is very low. The bad news is that means it's difficult to stand out in such a sea of noise. But that's what we're going to show you how to do. We're going to give you those 5 email templates I mentioned, and you'll be able to adapt these to your ideal customers. The reason we give you 5 emails is because people are busy. So often one message, it's not enough. It may pass them by as they're running from meeting to meeting, or they're out of office, they're on holiday, or they're at some type of big conference. Let's first discuss how you can be seen as not one of those spam emails and what the problem is with most sales emails at the moment. So here's an example of what most sales emails look like. So this is sent to a man named Jeff, but the problem, if you read this email, you couldn't tell me a single thing about him. Now, this is normally a good test of an email. When you read it, does it tell you a lot about the other person? Or does it tell you more about your business and what you're selling? If it's about the other person, it will be relevant to them. But if it's just about you, here's a hard truth. They don't care about you. They only care about themselves. So you need to show that you understand their world. Now, if you haven't watched our video on the 5 pillars of sales, watch that email first, as we'll be talking about how to use them in the context of our first email here. The first thing to do with an email is to research your buyer. What interesting observations do you have, 1 about their company and 2 about them as individuals? So let's imagine I'm targeting this guy, Dan Ho, who is the head of sales development at Birdie. We can see from LinkedIn that he is hiring SDRs and his recent posts about taking his team paintballing. At a company level, I know that they sell to care homes, so I use that in my subject line, SDR paintballing. Now he's opened the email, I want to start the message with you instead of we or I, as it's going to force me to talk about him and his company. So here's the first line: Dan, fun initiative taking your SDRs paintballing. The reason we put this personalization up front in the first line is twofold. Many people stop reading the email if they read the first line and they think it's all about selling your product. The second is preview text. This is the text that comes up after your subject line that is a continuation of the subject line. Once I've got his attention with the first line, I want to move on to our next pillar and talk about a pain point that is both measurable and emotional. So I write, as you're hiring new SDRs, onboarding can be tiring as the average ramp time for a SaaS SDR is 4 months. Now, in case you didn't know, SaaS is software as a service and SDRs are sales development reps at book meetings. In general, with acronyms, only use them if you know your buyer understands them. Based on working with tech sales leaders like Dan, I know they use this language, which is why I've used it. In terms of the pain, the average ramp-up time of 4 months is my measurable material challenge, and the onboarding being tiring is my spiritual challenge about how it makes Dan feel. Now, based on my conversations with thousands of sales leaders, I know that a big pain point after hiring is onboarding. Now, if you're new to your job and not sure what the pains of your customers are, see if you can interview some of your happiest customers and ask them what were the big pain points they had before working with you. If not, you can also ask some of your leadership team or more experienced teammates who have closed a lot of deals. So let's look at the call to action, or CTA, which is the question that inspires your leads to reply. Interested in a playbook template that can help your SDRs get in front of more care homes. This here is what we call the content giveaway and applies the concept of giving versus taking we talked about in the 5 pillars module. Most salespeople ask for 15 minutes for a meeting in their CTA, but you haven't earned the right to ask for time off a stranger until you've given them something of value. So think about what is a piece of content that is relevant to their job role and company. As Dan is hiring SDRs, I'm giving our playbook template that he can use with or without us to help onboard his SDR team. If you're not sure what content you can give, then ask your marketing team or even fellow sellers what content your buyers like and is popular with them. Now, you also see we don't use a link to the content or an attachment, as this may get you sent to spam. Email servers don't trust emails that have attachments from unknown addresses. It also means they have to reply yes to your email to see the content, which means you can start a conversation. The goal here with this first email is just to get him to reply yes. And once he has done that, I've started a conversation and have then earned the right to ask for time. A sneaky tactic is if someone replies to you, often their mobile number is in the signature, or cell phone as you say in the US, and you can have a conversation about the content you sent. If I was to call Dan, I could then ask him, just sent over the playbook template. How are you currently training SDRs? In our cold calling module, we'll discuss what else to say in those cold calls. Final note on this email is that it's short. You want to keep it under 100 words, but ideally even under 70 words. You're a stranger and you need to get their attention quickly. Also, another tip, read it on mobile and see if it comes in big blocks of text. 70% of emails are now read on cell phones. So here's the template to use. Pause the video and write your own. Once you've written it down, show it to some colleagues like a manager or a fellow seller and get some feedback on it. Okay, I've got some bad news for you, I'm afraid. Most strangers will not reply after the first email. Often they don't even see your email. Not because they're not interested, but because they're out of office. That means maybe they're at an event, they're traveling, they're on holiday. 2, maybe they're busy with internal matters, they're speaking with colleagues. Or 3, often they actually open your email, they find it interesting, but they never reply. So what you need to do in these cases is send what we call a bump email. That's just a reply to your original email, not a new email. And the only goal of this message is to give more attention to your original message. Here's an example of a bump message. Re-SDR paintballing. Dan, interested in that playbook template for your new hires. The reason this is only one line is so your prospects can see it without having to scroll down. You put a lot of time into the first email, so want to draw more attention to it. Send the email to your mobile to check they don't have to scroll down to see the email. Sales is about balancing quality and quantity, as we need quality messaging that's relevant to our buyers, but it's also a numbers game, as most people are not ready for your product or even aware they have a problem. So this is another reason we do the bump. That first email may take you 10 or even 15 minutes to create. So this is a one line that you can automate across several buyers. Our email sequences combine personalization with automation and templates, as we'll describe later in our sequence and follow-up module. So here's the format to use. Press pause on the video and make your own version. So far we have 2 emails. The first one is personalized, giving away a piece of content, and then one bumping it. But you want more than 2 emails in your sequence. When people don't reply, don't assume they don't like your email unless they've replied telling you that. Often people are just busy. You'll have an individual reply rate per email, and then you have a sequence reply rate, which is the collective reply rate for all of your emails. Talking about my colleague Lawrence Jackman again, he does full-time business development and he's been doing it for over 30 years. He actually has even more credibility than me on this topic. And he ran an email sequence to over 1,200 leads. And here you can see the reply rate. First email, 4%, then the reply rate goes down a bit, 3%, 2%, 1%, 2%. And then you can actually see towards the end, it goes up. 3.5% on the 7th email, and the highest reply rate is actually on the 9th email, 4.4%. So in total, 141 people, that's over 18% replied, 27 of which were turned into sales qualified opportunities, 4 of which came from email 9. Impressive stats for his email sequence to stranger. Now, if Lawrence had just sent 3 emails, he would have only got 62 replies, 43% of his final number. He also only have generated 14 opportunities, half of what he received. So the moral is results come by following up. You don't necessarily need 8 emails for your sequences, but as you can see, the more emails you send, the higher your reply rate will be. And I'm not advocating to spam people, which is why we do research on our buyers. Now let's add 3 more templates here. This time we're going to be more direct and talk about our service and product, but we're not going to do it through the features, right? We're going to do it through a customer story, as we've already talked about in the 5 pillars module. Now the subject line I'm going to use is paintball promotions. I'll talk later about why I mentioned the word promotions, but you'll notice I use paintball again. If you do your research for the first email, you don't need to do research again. So save yourself time by playing on the same research, but in a slightly different way here. The body of the email will have the same structure as email 1, with the observation and pain to start, but this time with a different pain to touch on a different theme. Dan, after your new SDRs start to target at care homes, they will face a lot of rejection, and on average 36% don't last a year. So here we have the same research about care homes and him hiring SDRs, but I've mentioned a different pain point around SDR rejection and also a stat about SDRs leaving. What's different in this email is this part about a customer story, which you can see here below. Inbox Health, another healthcare SaaS, reduced SDR attrition, had 3 of their SDRs promoted, and doubled pipeline thanks to our sales playbooks and training. Here we want to make the customer the hero of the story, Simba, and talk about the pains they solved, reduced SDR churn, and statistical benefits of working with us, doubling of pipeline. The reason we do this is social proof, as leads are thinking, what similar companies have you worked with in the past? Inbox Health is a startup with 100 employees, so I know they're not super well known, which is why I clarified that they're a healthcare software. You'll also notice only at the end of the 3rd email have I mentioned our services, as I want to make Inbox Health the hero of this story, not us, and talk about them and only mention what we did right at the end. Now, finally, the call to action is opposed to learning more. This is a low friction call to action, again, that is essentially asking for interest and trying to elicit a yes or no response. So here is the format, and now create your own email using this template. We'll now write another bump similar to email 2 to follow up on our 3rd email. Subject line, re-paintball promotions. Dan, interested in learning how Inbox Health reduced SDR attrition. As you can see, this structure is exactly the same as the bump email on email 2, one line as a reply to the previous personalized email to give it more attention as you put a lot of effort into it. The only difference here is that we are bumping interest in the customer story versus the content giveaway like we did before. So here you can see my example and a template. Pause the video and write your own one-line bump for your ideal customer. So finally, we have a last touch email. Even if you send 8, 10, 12, yes, I know people that have sent 12 emails and got a meeting on the 12th email. At some point, you have a last touch. But I never say give up, as some people will not reply simply as it's not the right time. So contact them again in 2 to 3 months. It's just a pause. That's why I actually never liked this concept of the breakup email, which a lot of salespeople use as a last touch. How can you break up with someone if you were never together in the first place? You can't get divorced if you weren't married. So instead of a breakup email, we use the feedback email. As discussed in our biopsychology module, us salespeople have a really bad reputation. We're seen as being commission-hungry beasts that will sell our souls to the devil. What the feedback email does is put the buyer in a position of power. And that's the case, right? We are asking them for their time, for their money, for their replies. So they are in a position of power. And we acknowledge that and ask, subject line, feedback. Dan, do you mind providing some feedback on my emails? It will help me improve and save other sales leaders from my mediocre messaging. This flips the reputation of salespeople on its head by coming from a place of humility and asking for feedback. And most people like to be helpful, as helping others makes you feel better about yourself. Want to know a really mad thing about this feedback template? Remember that customer story I told you earlier about Inbox Health? We won that customer from a feedback email. This was the email. Feedback from Mike. Mike, I'm always looking to improve when speaking to other sales leaders, so I have a quick favor to ask. Do you mind sharing some feedback about my email outreach? Cheers, Michael. This was a couple years ago, so since then we deleted the first line as we're always evolving. I also added the part of mediocre messaging for a bit of humor, but it still worked in this case, and this is what Mike responded. Michael, I'm obsessed with outreach, sequences, and content with my team, so understand the request and happy to discuss. Mike, and then he even put, P.S. I guess this email proves the please help approach can work. So not only did Inbox Health become a customer of ours, but Mike Sheridan, who is their chief revenue officer, became a mentor of mine. He previously managed teams of thousands of salespeople, so I asked him to mentor me. So yeah, asking for feedback can lead to real magic. Talking of feedback, if you have any feedback for me on this video, please feel free to contact me, as I'm always looking to improve too. So here's the template you can use. Pause the video and save it for yourself. So here are 5 takeaways to help you generate more leads from your emails. 1, research your recipient and make the email more about them than you. Easy tip is to use 90% you and your language versus we or I, as it forces you to talk about them. 2, put your research in the subject line to get them to open your email. For example, if they're opening a new office in Amsterdam, just write Amsterdam office. Remember, the goal is just to build build curiosity for them to open the email. 3, in the body of the email, use the 5 pillars as a structure, but keep your emails under 100 words, ideally 50 to 75 words. 4, always reply to your highly customized emails in the same thread with one-line bumps to draw more attention to them. We ask for feedback, but you can incorporate your own personality into these. And finally, 5, be persistent. As the story of Lawrence shows, the more persistent you are, the more replies you get. Don't just send one follow-up email, send at least 5 emails in your sequence, or if you're brave, you can even send up to 9 like Lawrence. Now go get it. Now that's the end of this free video, but if you'd like to have unlimited access to the full course and watch the rest of this video, you can sign up in the link below.